Either. I think that most people that learned about the Kony 212 campaign are pretty sick about it. I mean, if they have some kind of brain cell, because of course you see millions of young people wasting their time buying t-shirts, rallying, and none of them takes the airplane to Africa and goes into the bush and whacks Kony over the skull or drags him out, puts him in jail or whatever. Nobody does that. Millions and millions of dollars wasted because people have the illusion, and I hope that illusion is now crushed, that their opinion matters. It doesn't matter what your opinion is, it only matters what your actions are. And you only can have an interesting opinion if you are in a platform where, let's say, your opinion is respected and translated into action if you have it. So, if you are in a car together with somebody else and you say, well, I want to go to the right because I think that's a better route, and you go to the right and there's a better route, fantastic, then your opinion about it mattered. And if you want to, let's say, get a beautiful house and you want to discuss about the furniture and you have a taste and you apply that, then your opinion might be respected and you might exactly be able to buy together what you like and all that stuff. But in politics these days, opinions don't matter. What matters is whether people believe that their opinions matter. Why? Because then they won't be disturbing the process that's really going on, which is the maximizing of the utility of carbon around the world. And of course, one of the parts of doing that is to secure natural resources in Africa. And in order to secure them, let's say, either you get them or nobody else gets them. A great way to have that is to have chaos in a region where there's resources that you don't want anybody else to have. Because, if that's the case, then you can always fight a small war in that region, which everybody will say, well, okay, that's chaos. There's chaos there, these rebels are fighting. It's you fighting for your resources to make sure that nobody else gets them, but it's not recognized as such. That's what it means to support the Contras and to support terrorists, Taliban in Afghanistan. That's what it is. It's basically fighting a war by proxy of local terrorists. And in order to achieve that, you can make them fight and have different opinions, but usually, they are the complete opposite. They are people with opinions that actually do something with it. But there's no loss here, really. But I think the point of my video is that to remind people to focus on what does affect democracy and what does affect the powers, the forces, the companies. And maybe I shouldn't use those fake terms. I completely regret that. People that talk about the powers that be, they make you, per definition, inferior to the powers that be, because they're simply companies somewhere with offices somewhere and people that work there and try to make a living. Nothing mysterious or evil or abstract about it. Coca-Cola company, factories, distribution centers. Yeah, that's the trucks. That's what Coca-Cola company is. A bunch of people. Same with Wall Street. If you want to influence them, you can. And we have seen a very clear example and a demonstration that can actually happen. Because Coca-Cola changed their formula because they had a formula in which they had caramel as a colorant. Caramel is heated, it's like, say, denaturated sugar. You put sugar in a frying pan, you heat it up, it gets brown, you get a specific smell of caramel. But problem is with heating food, is that it usually starts to form all kinds of compounds. Some of them are carcinogenic and some of them form also in caramel, just like in the bottom of if you bake a steak and it's all black, that's not very healthy. So what did they do? They changed their formula. Why? Because if there would have been a news item like carcinogenic compounds in Coca-Cola, then people would stop buying Coca-Cola, and that's devastating to Coca-Cola. So immediately they changed their strategy and they removed the compound from the caramel. I'm not sure how they did that, but that's what they did. So that's where your power lies. And it's true, because that's, for most people, let's say if you're working during the day, you're in your office or you're in your garage, you're facilitating. That's what you need to be doing in order to help people. That's what keeps society going. Work. That's what work is. The only thing that really influences society is where you change it because you want to have something in it and you purchase it. Or you don't want to have something in it, so you don't purchase it. And you can of course talk about making and not making, but for the majority, let's say in the consumer-driven societies that we have today, it's about what you buy. And so that's where the power is, and that's where democracy is these days. It's in the shopping. It's not in shopping, the act of shopping, but it is in making distinctions between what you buy. That's where you have influence. So my tip would be, and I'm going to do it myself, and I have done it actually because I got sick of I got sick of the amount of cheese that I always eat, and it's every time it's wrapped in the same type of hard plastic packaging, of which I recently read that it's also unhealthy. But that's just plastic tax on every product, and food is already extremely carbon intensive because it takes 10 calories of carbon to produce 1 calorie of food, while it used to take 0 calories of carbon energy to produce food for the last, let's say, 6 billion years that organisms have been on Earth. So that's completely ridiculous. So what I've done is I've eliminated cheese in hard packaging, and I'm actually trying to eliminate cheese altogether. Because it's also way too salty these days, because people know that if you make cheese salty, then people want to eat more of it. But that's where and if you do one of these things every day, and you suggest to others to do the same thing, and you focus on thinking about the carbon intensity of the product that you're eating, and think about that it is in principle possible for it to be carbon negative or carbon neutral. Carbon negative is when you grow a crop biologically and you don't burn what you don't eat about it. You throw it on the bottom of a deep lake and it captures carbon. Or let's say apples grow on a tree. The apple tree captures carbon. If you make sure that you don't burn the tree after 20 years of growing, then you have captured carbon. So in principle most food can be carbon negative. If you try to focus on that and then try to make it more local, because that means less transportation. Give it less plastic wrapping. Make sure that you buy things not in any plastic, because that's plastic tax, that's carbon tax on your product. Try to buy it in a shop that doesn't have like coolers with no protection at all. Go to shops where they show that they don't, that they're not burning as much carbon as possible. Air conditioning is blazing. 14% of US energy is spent on air conditioning, while air conditioning could be carbon neutral or even carbon negative, because the energy sources, renewable energy sources that you can use for air conditioning can also be used for heating. So you would have, in the summer you would have solar-driven air conditioning, and in the winter you would have solar-driven heating in your home, and you would use less carbon. So 40% cost in society could actually be like a 14% or even more percent win or yield. That's just because you're told through the media to not utilize the resources around you, because that's too complicated. Well, everything else is very easy, but that's too complicated. And pricing is usually used as a indicator of whether something is a good buy or not. That you should also completely forget. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy the cheapest option or whatever you can afford. But to give an example how prices are completely bogus in a carbon credit economy, gas prices are dropping in the US. But what is a gas price? What does it mean? If let's say there is a point at which you cannot produce the gas because you need an amount of gas to produce it, or oil. But if you're an oil company that is also producing gas from gas wells, you don't need a red cent to do that. You need fuel, maybe gas fuel, maybe diesel fuel. That's what your engines run on. and then the gas comes out of the ground once you have drilled the hole, which requires a lot of diesel probably. And I've seen calculations of that. That's cubic meters of diesel per day that go through a drilling process. It's immensely energy intensive. If you have that available, then of course because you're an oil company, then of course drilling a gas well doesn't cost a thing. So what's the gas price? What does it mean? Nothing, because you don't need the money that people give you for that gas. Because what can you do with that money? Give it to somebody and then he'll buy more gas of you. Doesn't mean anything. That's the carbon credit system. And that's the price illusion. And then in the media you hear, well, gas prices are so low, how can we make solar panels now, competitively? That's just because gas companies say, well, okay, we can have two choices. Either we sell it for next to nothing, or we don't sell it anymore. Simple. The same goes for organic against, let's say, processed food. There is no money in organic food for carbon credit investors, because it's organic. It doesn't need carbon. So that's why you always have over-processed food. And then they can make it healthy, but actually doing that artificially is quite difficult. Well, if you eat an apple is healthy. Or lentils or something like that, which is completely, of course, lentils, who eats lentils? It's healthy. And it's about, you have to cook it a long time. Well, maybe not, if you do it smartly, but there's this, a long time ago I made a video about it and then I'll quit, but there's this crop in Africa. It's a plant that grows. I forgot the name. I've tried to put it below this video if I can look it up. And it's fantastic because it grows really quickly and it has all these nitrogen and all this nutritious food. It's like algae, but then growing on land. And it's just a miracle for African people. If they're hungry, they can eat it, and they won't starve and they won't be malnutritioned. And it needs very little water and all that stuff. It's like a miracle plant. That's what it's called. Immediately you get Monsanto going, well, but we maybe we can improve this plant. That's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to own it. Can I have introduce some pesticide gene in it, and then they can patent it, and then they own it, and you can no longer grow it freely, and that's taken from you, that healthy food, and it's now carbon credit approved, because it can be grown with all kind of carbon products. So if you want to change things, don't care about the opinions of people, and don't care about your own opinion too much, but do something that directs the energy available in society, the fossil fuel energy in society, towards the people that get the threat that this whole carbon credit bonanza and direction and this cartel basically present. And it's not like marginal. If you read that 8 years from now, food production in Africa, which is largely non-irrigated, so it's dependent on rainfall, due to climate change, food production in Africa will be 50% less, half of what it is today. Try to build a business case on a let's say a 10-year. Let's say if you have a nuclear facility and you have a 50-year or a 30-year business case for that, and your income will halve after 8 years. That's difficult. That is a challenge. How you deal with that? It is horrible. So I think that it's very important to exercise whatever power you have, and I think the biggest power that most people have is in their wallet, in their choice of products. But anyway, now I'm being way too lengthy in this video. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you take my advice. Thanks for listening.